So, not to digress too much, and I don't want to spend the entire night talking about Prince, but obviously, big deal, big part of your career and whatever. But the Elizabeth Taylor thing lets me ask, can you explain a little bit of the Prince Michael Jackson relationship? Because I was working on a Michael Jackson record when Prince came to visit, and obviously I was not in the room, but like it was a big deal. We were talking about it for days before he showed up, and they hung out for a couple hours and then he took off and no one really knew what happened. But there was obviously a rivalry in a way of perception as well as music and all that. But I'd love to hear from your
Yeah.
side of it, like what that was about, if anything, really.
Well, I only saw, snippets of it. I saw snippets of it when Michael came to visit him at the Hollywood soundstage once, and they played ping pong together. And Michael had come down to ask him to duet with him on the song Bad, and Prince ultimately turned him down. But I saw that. I can tell you in broad strokes, this is an incomplete picture, but Prince loved the rivalry. Competition makes you better and stronger. What's the use of being the best football team or whatever if you don't have anybody else to play? I mean, you want to play an opponent who's as strong as you. So I know he enjoyed that rivalry very much. I can also safely say I don't think Prince was threatened musically by Michael. They had different sets of strengths. So Michael didn't do what Prince did. So Prince, I think, admired him and really loved the rivalry. And with Michael, because there was this rivalry, he wasn't willing to let on how much he admired Michael, but he definitely did. Definitely did.
Right. Because to me, being, I don't know, a white Long Island kid or whatever, I didn't even see it. There's been much overlap. Like, who are they competing for? It seemed like different audiences in a way, but I'm sure it wasn't really. Because when you get to a certain point, your audience is so big, it has to overlap with everybody else's audience. So,
Yeah, a thing that used to bother me then when I worked for Prince was why he wouldn't correct false impressions among the general public sometimes. Um, because of this rivalry, I think among the general public, they thought that Michael was the nice boy next door, and you'd let your kids hang out with Michael because he's such a good guy and he loves children so
which
much
is
and he's
only
so
slightly
safe.
ironic given the last few years.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah. So Michael is the safe one, and isn't he a good boy? And why can't more rock stars be more like Michael Jackson? And the image was that Prince was this nasty freak. And if only they knew how conservative he was, Prince, how respectful he was, how the respect with which he treated women, the respect he had for children and for they're just in propriety. I mean, he was rather conservative actually in his political and many of his views. He was Prince was safe as milk.
he was
He
a
was
real Midwesterner.
exactly. He was very expressive as an artist in his lyrics, but that's his art. The man himself was someone you could trust your daughter with. If she were out on a date with Prince, she would not be harmed. I tell you that right now. I mean, he was a good man, and he would let the misperception lie. He would let it just be what it was.
Did he think it may have helped him a little bit being the bad boy? Like if someone had to be the good boy, then he can be the bad boy because it wasn't I don't know. No one ever talked about it like that was a bad thing. It was just like, oh well, Prince is that, and it seemed to just be his image in a way.
Yeah. I don't really know. I don't know that I've ever heard him talk about it. Wendy and Lisa probably heard him talk about it because we didn't talk that much in the studio because he's had
Right, you're too
so
busy.
fast and we're working. So the times when I saw him, I was not necessarily privy to what he was thinking. I remember once though, this was poignant. Um, he was written about in some one of the big magazines. It might have been Time or Newsweek. It was a big deal because I know it was a big deal because he did something unusual. He stopped a session. We were at Sunset Sound and he's got the magazine open. And I believe Wendy and Lisa were in the room too. And he's reading the article to us out loud. And I remember he's reading about himself and his keyboard playing. And then he stops and he looked up and he got this faraway look in his eyes. He's looking toward just off in the distance somewhere. And he says, nobody ever talks about my guitar playing. And then he went back to the article and I went, I know. Why don't they? Why don't you say something? But he would not, he did not attempt to control the narrative
Yeah.
beyond his access to it. He limited his access to it. And after that, let them write what they want to write. He adopted that motto, never complain, never explain.
Right. Wow. Well, and it worked. It's,
Yeah.